All right, my name is Dorothy Kent. I was born Dorothy Caspel. I'm third generation Caspel. My grandmother, Mary Fern Caspel, came from Pennsylvania. She was a Pennsylvania Dutch girl. She was 3 years old. The family walked beside a Surrey all the way up to Alberta, and they came out via the Beaver Lodge camp and then over to Alberta where they set up their life here. And I mean, she moved from various parts, but she always came back to Nanton.
My name is George Blake, born and raised here. My family have been here since 1889, I guess. My grandfather and his brother came. And I'm going to tell you a few stories, basically from my childhood, the 50s and 60s, when I was raised, just to give you a little flavor of what Nanton was all about.
I'm Glenn Weidman from Nanton, Alberta. I've been in Nanton since 1955, I think. I believe I'm the oldest Palomino left in Nanton.
So my name is Jennifer Handley. I am the mayor of Nanton. I've been the mayor since 2017.
And my name is Dan Fox, and I'm the vice president of the Bomber Command Museum of Canada.
Yeah, I'm Glenn Ransom. I've lived here majority of my life, all but about 4 or 5 years. I was born, raised northeast of town here, and my grandparents come here in the my grandma was born here, my grandfather born in Kansas in late 1898 or whatever, and their parents come here when they were just little kids, or my grandfather anyway, and we've lived here ever since.
My name is Don Williams. I was born in Calgary, but my family all lived in Nanton. My grandfather lived right in town here. My mother, during the war, I was born the 6th of December, 41.
Well, my name is Wayne Schlosser. I was born in Claresholm. I'm 89 years old.
I'm Jean Comstock. I am the oldest daughter of John Comstock. I am Frank Comstock's granddaughter. And on my other side of the family, I am Georgina Blake's daughter. She was Adam and Alice Blake's daughter, her and Aunt Dell.
Ronald St. Clair Eldridge, that's what my name is, yes.
Okay, I moved to Nanton in 1955 with my parents, Martin and Isla Thompson, and my brother Len, and we rented the Townsend Place east of Nanton.
My name is Bridget Jones, and I moved to Nanton in the late 1950s.
When I came home from college, all I did was ranch. It's all I've done all my life, all I ever wanted to do. I made the Bar S Ranch my home. It's 17 miles west. I give directions to people. I tell them to get on 533, step it up to 60 mile an hour, and if you slow down to turn, you're wrong.
My name is Joyce Blake Brockway.
Hello, my name is Donald Tofsrud. I was born here in Nanton in 1955 and raised here throughout my life.
How do you do? My name is Ross McIntyre, and I've been living in the Silver Willow Lodge, and I'm here to give you a little information about myself.
Hi, I'm Alden Duffy, and I'm here to say a few things about the town of Nanton that I grew up in.
Mary and, Fern she was known as, and Snow Sears were the collaborators and instigators of the Nanton Mosquito Creek Roundup book. They spent a lot of time talking to people, both urban and rural, about submitting the stories of their families, who they married, the children that was begot from them. And they also compiled a lot of history from the Nanton area. And they compiled a lot of the information handwritten in pencil on yellow legal pad. And I'd asked my teacher, Gwen Lyons, if we could, in grade 10, instead of typing big fat fox, jumped over the lazy dog, if we could take these letters or notes and type them up from her. And they were then all collected at the end of the year, or I actually gave them back to Grandma as we did them, and they were put into the Publist, so it was easier for them to read and put together what we now know as the Mosquito Creek Roundup book. We call it the Nanton Bible. If you ever wanted to know anything about anybody, urban or rural, you just pick their name out of the index at the back and you can read up on who married who, where they found their partner, and how many kids they had, and what their kids' names were. So it's a really good reference book, and that's what we need in Nanton. It's perfect.
Nanton in those days was primarily service to farming and ranching community. So that was its center of interest. The town was merely a service point for this, and lots of farms. There was a farm on every section, a farm on every half section. Families, the schools were full, the ranches were full. The ranches had hired men. In the fall, the farms had hired men, and not just a few. It was the thrashing era, so every farm in the fall had 10 or 12 extra people there. So there were a lot of characters around, a lot of business available. Nanton in those years, just a brief recount, we had 4 grocery stores, 2 butcher shops, 2 drug stores, dry cleaners. We had every service that any area would ever need, and they all serviced the farmers and the ranchers. Every Saturday night, the stores stayed open till 9 o'clock. So as a kid, we worked all week. We lived 2 miles from town and came to town once a week, maybe twice a week, 2 miles. Saturday night, big night. We had a big bath or a shower at home. Everybody got their new jeans on, came to town. The town was humming. Main Street, full, both ways, parked, angle parking, you couldn't move. The women were in shopping, the men were stood in front of the cars with their foot in the fender, everybody visiting. The hotel was real busy. A lot of my relatives spent quite a bit of time there on Saturday. The kids came to town. We had the Broxy Theater. The Broxy Theater started with afternoon matinees, westerns. In the evening they'd have a double header. So big deal if you could come to town and go to the show. Big deal you could go to the stores and buy candy. We used to gather in gangs and roam up and down the streets while the parents shopped. It was humming.
The Broxy Theater was on the southbound, right where the town office is right now. And Saturday matinees were 25 cents, and my favorite was Buddy Ebsen and Shirley Temple.
In early June of 2024, 4 of us, including my wife and I, and Jennifer Handley and Rachel Herbert, attended ceremonies in Nanton, France, a little village northwest of Paris, where we are twinned with that community and have been since 2009. The reason being that Squadron Leader Ian Bazalgette, trying to save 2 injured crew members, crashed his Lancaster, missing the village of Nanton, and he crashed on the other side of the village, and he and the 2 crew members were killed. And as a result, he won the Victoria Cross the highest honor you can get in the British Commonwealth. And he was from Calgary and was the only winner of the Victoria Cross from Alberta in World War II. So since 2009, being twinned with that little village, they celebrate or commemorate every year the fact that Ian Bazalgette, trying to bomb V-1 rocket sites in France, he was hit by anti-aircraft fire, and as a result he died. And so every year we honor him, and we have done since 1990 by putting F2T on the side of our Lancaster, which signifies that that was the aircraft that he died in.
I'm Glenn Weidman from Nanton, Alberta. I've been in Nanton since 1955. I believe I'm the oldest Palomino left in Nanton, and being on the Palominos, I started out as a defenseman and went to practice one day in Claire's home, and the regular goaltender couldn't be there. It was a Sunday, so he had to attend church. So the coach looked at me and said, "Glenn, put the pads on." So I put the pads on, and from that day forward, I was a goaltender. And the other poor kid never got to play goal again. The year before I was a Palomino, the Palomino team won the Big Six championship, and a year later is when I became a Palomino, and shortly thereafter I became the goaltender for the Palominos. And I played for several years. We never did win a championship, but we were right runners-up, trying to win, but we just couldn't do it. We had an awful lot of young players on the team, and the other teams were more established than what we were. It was early in my career playing goal. I was at Claire's home, and they'd got me a mask, just a face mask to put on. I put it on, started playing, and I couldn't see down towards my feet without bending my head. So I sent the mask with the defenseman to the player's box. I didn't want the damn thing. And it wasn't only a shift or two later, I got a puck in the mouth. So I decided from that time on that I would have a mask. And I wore the mask for quite a while. Then Jack Scott, he was on another team. He said, "Glenn," he says, "I'll get you one that'll fit a lot better." He got me one. Wasn't too bad. Then later I was given a helmet with a wire cage on the front of it, and I wore it the rest of the time while I played goal. I was playing one night, and a guy came in on me, and I went down to make the save, and he fell and went up with his skates and sliced my head open, and I had to go get stitches, and they decided that I shouldn't play anymore that night, so they put in another goaltender. He was just a member of the team, and he went out on the ice, and it was instantly he was injured. So I was back again and okay, at least I thought I was. So I said, "I'll put the pads back on, I'll play," and I did. And we won the game. Back when I started playing, A lot of us young people didn't have vehicles, and so the Booster Club in Nanton took over, supplied transportation to all the games, and they also, in the one year, they got us club jackets, and at a booster supper they presented us with our club jackets, and I still have that jacket today. It was a beautiful jacket, and I was so proud of it. And, so the boosters were a big part in the Nanton Palomino team when I played.
I've been around here giving choral courses arranged by the U of A. And I liked Nanton so much that somehow I finished up here. Well, my mother knew somebody who was at the University of Toronto, and she asked him if he knew of anybody in Canada who would like a choral conductor. So he suggested people all across Canada, and U of A wrote to me and said, "We'd be interested to see you." So they put me in the extension department, and they arranged courses, 10-week courses, all over little towns in Alberta, from the top of the Peace River to Lethbridge and Pictureview, all over. So I saw a lot of Alberta and a lot of communities and a lot of awful nice people. But somehow I finished up in Nanton. Well, a friend of mine called Janice Ackroyd both went up to a performance in High River of HMS Pinnacle by Gilbert and Sullivan, who are a very well-known pair of musicians and libretto writers. And they wrote 20-odd musicals, very well known in England. And we were entranced by this performance of HMS Pinnacle. And I remember we looked at each other and said, we could do this. So we came back to Nanton and started casting it in our minds and finding people who we thought could handle it, and got it going and put it on. And everybody came. Of course, in those days they liked coming to homegrown things. After we'd done that, the next year we thought, well, we'd better do a play. So we did, I think, 3 one-act plays. This was in 1982, by the way. So the next year we did 3 one-act. And then a neighbor of mine in the hills called Alvin Berger came to me kind of rather wondering and said, I've got a sort of idea of something we could put on, just a one-act. So I said, well, let's think about it. So he wrote what he'd written out. And I said, Alvin, there's enough here for a full 3-act play. Oh, says he, well, come back with another version of this. So he came back with notes scribbled everywhere, names of songs we could do, because he'd studied down in the States, and he heard a lot of music. He loved music. The first one was called Musical Memories of the Gaslight Era. And we put it on and everybody loved it. And We did 3 performances and had to do a 4th. So that was the beginning of the Chinook Singers and Players.
And we had a telephone office here in Nanton, in where Blake Willow was. Jerry Blake had an insurance office. I don't know, it's his son-in-law now. And there was about, there'd be 2 or 3 girls worked in there. That went on for quite a while until the phones changed. Oh, we used to have party lines. There was about 15 people maybe on this party line. Different households. And my uncle and Uncle Fred and my dad would didn't want everybody to know what they were talking about because there was so often ladies rubbering. So they would talk Blackfoot. And so anyway, they were pretty good at it too. So of course then my dad rubbered again later, and he heard these old girls discussing what kind of language were they talking anyway. Because he'd been rubbering. But we had this party line and we each had a different ring. You could have ours was a long and 4 shorts, but there was many numbers, and you know, if somebody was ringing at night, why, it disrupted the neighborhood, eh?
So how did that work?
Not very good, because if you wanted the phone, sometimes you'd have to tell them to get off the phone. Well, so you could ring yourself, eh? Yes, you'd have to hang up if your neighbor wanted to use the phone. They'd ask to use the phone. Yeah, and then of course we all had boyfriends that were phoning, and that would get to longer yet, and that was juicy for everybody to listen.
One quick story. I'm about 12 years old, my buddy is 13. We love to play baseball. We're on the baseball team. There was a building where the bank is now, the Treasury branch. A long building, no windows in it. Inside the building was where they housed the controls for the town siren. In that, every day at noon, the siren came on to let us all know it was time to go for lunch, because apparently no one had a watch. I never understood it, but the siren went on.
Yeah, I remember the siren that announced lunchtime.
So anyway, the control for the siren is in there, and he and I are playing catch one day, and the siren was also the alert for the fire department that there was a fire. So we're playing catch, and I'm throwing the ball, he's catching, and he missed the ball, I winged one, and it hit the wall of the thing. Hit the wall of this building. The siren goes off. We don't know, there's a fire, so we stand back and watch, and 5 minutes later, the firemen are all scrambling. They get in there and they get their suits on, and they're all saying, "Where's the fire?" And nobody knows, because when a fire got called in, they called it into the girls in the phone office, and they directed the fire department where the fire was. And they said, "Well, the girls, where's the fire?" Nobody knew where the fire was. So they all grumbled and went home. We resumed playing catch. About 15 minutes later, I missed one. He was throwing and hit the wall, and the siren goes again. By this time, we'd put 2 and 2 together, and we slunk off down the alley. The fire department all came back and said, "What's going on?" So now, to be honest, I'm going to fess up. We never did that again, except for about 3 years later. By now, we've got girlfriends that we're showing off for. And we said, "You want to see a neat trick?" So, 11 o'clock at night, Saturday night, we drove up by the building. We knew the spot exactly where this control was. Hit it with our hand, and the fire siren goes off. I don't know if there's any fire department member still alive that would blame us for that, but I thought it's safe to tell you.
But, there's some old characters around. I could tell some story about some of the circles. My grandfather, don't matter, I guess I can tell this now. My grandfather was a bootlegger and in town, and there was one other bootlegger in town. And
you want to explain what that is for people who maybe don't understand?
Well, I don't mind telling people my grandfather was a bootlegger, because probably most of the people that did with him are probably not here no more. But the other bootlegger was a fellow that ran a business in town, and I maybe not should say his name.
So what exactly is a bootlegger?
Well, he sold booze. We didn't have when I was at a certain age, we didn't have a liquor store here. My grandfather would go to High River or Claresholm and pick up truckloads of booze and bring it back and stash it in his house. And usually, when I was a little kid, I'd be in his house, which was part of J&J's up here, because the hotel had burnt down, and they moved in. My grandpa moved into the west end of J&J's. Wasn't there yet, but anyway, usually lots of Sunday mornings. Gramps would always go to the back door, paper bag, and at the time I was probably, I don't know, 7, 8. I didn't know for sure. Grandma says, "No, you stay here." I said, "You don't go."
I remember when the entrance to the bank was on the corner, a diagonal entrance. I remember 3 of us standing there with handguns when they had an amnesty to register your handgun. 3 of us standing in front of the bank with unregistered, up to that point, unregistered handguns. I bought my first car from Ralph Nixon, whose garage was, I forget which side of Tony McLeod's law office it was on now, but it was in that, probably to the west of Tony McLeod's. There was a Chev dealer ran by Ralph Nixon. Bought my first car from Ralph. Second hand. Bought my first new vehicle, a Blazer, a 1972 Blazer I bought from Ralph. The first generation SUVs. Buzz Green had a machine dealership. John Place had a machine dealership. When my dad always dreamt about a big round baler. New Holland brought 6 round balers into Nanton, I forget what year, in the early 70s I think it was. And my dad bought 2 of those 6 through John Place and various other machinery. I remember when the lumber yard was in the area that's now surrounded by big cement barriers. This was where the lumber yard was. South of the UFA, north of the block the bank is on. Next to we used to call it the pub, I'm not sure what it's called now, the blacksmith shop.
My name is Don Williams. I was born in Calgary, but my family all lived in Nanton. My grandfather lived right in town here. My mother, during the war, I was born the 6th of December, 41, and George Zarn owned the store out at Chain Lakes, and he went and joined the Navy, and he said to my mom, he came to the till, took all the money out, and he said, "I hope there's as much stock in this store when I get back as I left you with." And so, but the spring of 42 at Chain Lakes, it flooded and took the bridge out, and they got across the bridge with me as a baby, just as the bridge went out afterwards. So we were in town here. The things I've noticed mostly about the town was I was grade 1 in the parish hall by the Anglican church. The freight in town was delivered with a team of horses. George Duthie delivered horses. Gordie Shaw was the milk, or no, he wasn't the milkman then. I think it was a horse delivering the milk in the mornings then. And we had a theater, a movie theater, the Broxy Theater. Mom worked at Hallett's Red and White store that's behind where the bank is now, or where the Commerce Bank is. And my other aunt, Della, worked at the Jenkins store that was 2 doors up or 3 doors up from there. I remember, the one thing I remember about being a kid in Nanton is Mom had a hard time finding a quarter lots of times on Saturday, and it cost, I think 15 cents for the show and a dime for the bag of popcorn. And every other, you didn't worry about being poor because every other kid in town was the same. And I remember they were building the United Church, and we found a box of shells. And we were really smart 1 or 2 years. We were thrown in the fire that the construction guys had left there, and we're all alive still, except Kenny Roberts. I guess he's passed away, but we're all alive. So, and I had a pony in town that was great entertainment for a lot of kids. A lot of kids learned how to ride and how to get lice off a pony, and that. And no, it was a great place to be raised in Nanton.
The fire wasn't fun. I came home. I was at that time, they were putting an overpass up here north of town over the railroad, which is no longer there, it's gone. And, what was their name, from Kenworth Construction, from Lethbridge put that in there. I worked for them for a bit. And, but I come in that night, I was tired from working, and I had a piece of land at that time. Back west I was farming for Homer Ty, Mr. Ty. And so anyway, I came in, sat down, took my boots off, set them by the door, and the fire, anyhow, not the fire, but what happened, so I turned the radio on. I was sitting there and listened to the radio. And all at once, the lights went out. And I thought, what in the world is going on? So, by George, I sat there, and the next thing they came back on, but only for a short time. So the next thing I knew, by George, I said, the sirens was blowing here. And the smoke in that thing over the room, there's a little door over the door. The smoke started coming into my room, and boy, it was dark gray, just dirty black or gray smoke. And boy, she filled the room but fast. But anyhow, so I got up then, I said, oh, by gosh, I don't know what, I don't remember. All I remember, somehow I picked up a gray blanket off of my bed that I had. Well, I had 2 rooms, that's what I had. Well, anyhow, so I got out into the hallway. Now there was screeching and hollering, and there was old Mrs. Guy by the name of old Emma, and Sparky. He was a little Englishman who looked after the dish. He was there, and they were just screaming. So, but by God, you couldn't stand up. You couldn't stand that smoke. There's no way, because it was so dense and just so years and years of paint. Well, anyhow, burning. Well, anyhow, I got down on the floor. That's the only place I could get. So I crawled around on the floor till over to the door there, and I reached up and tried to get that my hand. Get my hand on the door, and I could pull it open, get the door open, maybe much more than maybe 6 inches at the most. As soon as there was any light, I guess, showed, they would pile on the door and shove the door back shut again. And finally, I said, look, people, if we're never going to get out of this thing alive, if you don't let me get this door open, I got to get the door open to the fire escape. So finally, I got the door open and got it back to so then we all climbed out on the fire escape. But fire right behind us, boy. She was up in the ceiling then, but got down below. When I got down there, I do know I got down anyway. Afterwards, I said to a guy down about a guy by the name of Mel Jackson, was a good dealer here in town, and he was up behind. And I said, look, Mel, I said, I got my good boots is up there. I think I can reach inside the door and get them. And he said, no, you're not going back upstairs. You're not going back up there. And he said, no way you are. So he said, stay down here. Well, I tell you, it wasn't very long, the building. So it was all an old wood building. Anyway, but she went down that fast. And I do know, we're dang lucky.
For a long time. My father was the fire chief for many, many years there. There was a hobo, or I guess now we call them homeless people, that used to walk from Calgary to Lethbridge. And he'd stop at all the little towns, and he liked Nanton best, I think, because we treated him pretty good. His name was Happy Himby. He didn't speak, but he had a big smile and a wave for everybody he saw, including the kids. My dad bought a cot and moved it into the fire hall and placed it in behind the fire trucks. And Happy always knew that he had a place to sleep when he came to Nanton, and it was great in the wintertime for him because I don't know many places that gave him that. And his only job there, Dad asked him to do, was to watch the fire trucks so that no one came in and siphoned gas from them. And he was quite happy to do that. When he passed away in Nanton. They took him in, couldn't find his family or any relatives that they could speak of. And when they checked his thing, he had a long tweed coat on, and they'd opened up the lining and found money in there. I'm not sure the exact amount, but probably a couple of $1,000s. So the town decided that they would take that money and buy the iron gates at the cemetery, and then put an iron plaque on the cemetery gate that says, in memory of Happy Himby. So that's how the iron gates became at the Nanton Cemetery.
Now, back in the 50s and the early 60s, we had a local character, a native, King Bearspaw. He was the son of many chiefs out at Eden Valley, and in the 1920s, when he turned 21, he renounced his treaty status in order that if he found anything, he loved treasure hunting. If he found any treasure, it was his. It did not have to go to the tribe. It did not have to go to the government. And the reason that he was a treasure hunter was that many years previously, in the 1870s, there were two American, treasure seekers up here, Blackjack and Lemon. Now, some of you may be familiar with the Lost Lemon Mine story, but Blackjack and Lemon discovered gold somewhere in these foothills between Nanton and the border. No one knows exactly where. And on their way out, they began arguing about who owns the gold and who stakes the claim, and on and on. And one of them killed the other one with an axe. Unbeknownst to them, they were watched by 4 young Stoney Indian lads, young braves that the chief had sent out to watch what they were doing because they were wary of this white man's gold. They came back and told their tribe and the elders in the tribe what had transpired, and they were sworn to secrecy. Now, King Bearspaw was the grandson of Moses Bearspaw was the man's name, and King was his grandson. And he heard this story, and in fact, he accompanied his father back on a number of trips in the early 1900s to see if they could find where this was. They knew where Blackjack and Lemon, where the murder had occurred. Anyway, King spent his life, as I said, searching for the gold. He used to come and round up a grub stake every spring from the local farmers and ranchers. He came to our place. My dad gave him a couple $100 every year to help finance the expedition on the promise that if he found something, some small part of it might come to you. I don't think my dad ever really believed that it would, but King was a friend. So King Bearspaw, from the 1920s until easily late in the 50s and the early 60s, spent his entire life, 50 years, hunting for the Lost Lemon Mine. He never found it, but he never gave up. And the legend still exists, and I am sure that the Lost Lemon Mine still exists somewhere out there. I was given a map that King Bearspaw used from 1938 Lands and Forest Survey map from the Alberta government of the mountain area, and King had changed all the names of the creeks and the rivers and the passes from the white man's names to the native names, and the names are incredible. And that is the map that he used for the last probably 30 or 40 years of his life, and I had it framed, and I got a call from the Glenbow Institute. They'd heard about it because the gal doing the framing said, I'm going to phone them just to see if they have a copy of this. And she phoned me and she said, well, we've never heard of the Lost Lemon Mine. And I said, you live in southern Alberta, you're the Glenbow Institute, and you've never heard of the Lost Lemon Mine or the legend of Blackjack and Lemon? Incredible. Anyway, King was an imposing character. I have photos of him at home, about 6'2", very good-looking gentleman. Spent his life devoted to the search of this, and I have written a song called The Ballad of King Bearspaw, which details in more detail the entire story. Someday we'll play it for you.
In the foothills and the mountains of the old Alberta West, one name stands tall, well above the rest. He spent his lifetime on a search looking for the lemon gold. For as a child he heard a story about a mother lode. From his grandfather and his father, who swore him not to tell about Blackjack and Lemon and how they went to hell. Two young stony braves who came upon the vein saw the white men fighting over who would own the claim. One would kill the other, the Stonies saw it all. Thus began King's mission, the legend of the fall. King Bearspaw, who will ever know the trails you rode, the stories told around your campfire's glow? King Bearspaw, what did you hope to find? The gold, the gold, the gold in that old lost lemon mine. Now Lemon rode down to Sweetgrass, told his story to LaRue. Late French sent McDougal to see if any of it was true. McDougal found Blackjack's grave and he also found the vein. Came back and told his story and then he went insane. Late French took up the tale, grubstake many a crew. But all of it was waste of time, 'cause no one found a clue. Chief Bearspaw knew the danger, laid a curse upon the place, upon the fine, upon the mine, so that none would find a trace. And so began the legend of the cursed lost lemon mine, and of the men that searched for it throughout the mists of time. King Bearspaw, who will ever know the trails you rode, the stories told around your campfire's glow? King Bearspaw, what did you hope to find? The gold, the gold, the gold in that old lost lemon mine. Took up the quest, a grandson of old Bearspaw. His name was King, and he was sure of what the Stonies saw. For his father, Moses, and a man named Joe LaFrance had taken him at 17 to look for their big chance. Thus began a lifetime of searching for the ore, camping on the rivers for 70 years or more. Searching out the stories, the tall tales from the true, following all the secret maps, just hoping for a clue. King spent his life believing, traveling wild and living free. For as he said to everyone, my father never lied to me. King Bear's Paw, who will ever know the trails you rode, the stories told around your campfire's glow? King Bear's Paw, what did you hope to find? The gold, the gold, the gold in that old lost lemon mine. King Bear's Paw, who will ever know the trails you rode, the stories told around your campfire's glow?